Hey there. Can you hear me?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. We got you now.
Are you Brent?
I sure am.
That was my hope. Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes, so I'm going to jump in. This is going to air today and
Great.
maybe again tomorrow.
Okay.
Um,
So we're pre-record right now then, right?
yes, that's right. That's right.
Perfect. Great.
Okay. But James, you're recording? Yes, it is. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, ready? Okay. So this is going to be after the Chris Ruddy. So I didn't mention this. I'll have to mention this in the 10
Right.
that we
We'll do
do,
a
that we
10.
got
We'll
this
do a
coming
10
up. Well, we
afterwards.
have to, yeah. Well, we got more than a 10 that we got to do. Here we go. Okay. Hey there, folks. In case you didn't know, there's kind of an important election coming up. Oh yeah, maybe today. Well, I thought let's talk to our friends at the Alliance for Prosperity,
Sorry.
AFP.
Americans for Prosperity. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
Let's start
okay.
over. I nobody, everybody. I mean, if anybody should know that.
Figured since we're right at the beginning, I'd grab you. I'd grab you.
Thank you. Good for you. Appreciate you doing that. Okay, here we go, folks. Welcome back. We are living through historic times. I thought it would be good today to talk to our friends at Americans for Prosperity, and coming to us from Americans for Prosperity is Brent Gardner. Brent, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
Where do we start? We have an election. What are your thoughts? Tell us what we don't know.
Well, this is an extremely close election. I do think everyone knows that, but we're
Actually,
really
no. No, you've already told me something that most of us don't know. There are a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's not going to be close." You do think it's going to be close.
I think all the polls have shown us that it's going to be a close election. All of the polling has shown races that are inside the margin with very few outliers. And that's why it's so critically important that so many folks are as engaged as they have been in the grassroots efforts that we've done, I think, this year.
Well, talk about what AFP is doing, because a lot of people listening are not as familiar as I am.
Yeah. So Americans for Prosperity has been engaged in 7 Senate races, some of the most competitive Senate races across the country, 44 House races, and more than 640 races nationwide at the state and local level. And just this week, we crossed over 16.4 million voter contacts, just under a million and counting in Ohio, and over a million in Pennsylvania alone. Grassroots activists, folks across this country have been having conversations in driveways and on doorsteps, talking about the importance of some really great candidates that we have this election cycle. And though I think things are definitely trending in the right direction, this is going to be one of those run through the tape elections where absolutely it's going to require us to get every single vote, not just committed, but through the door on election day.
Now, why do you think it's close? Because I have to say, I find it staggering that there are enough Americans that are so low information or so ignorant or so confused that they could conceivably pull the lever for Kamala Harris. This is not, 1988, where, yeah, some people like Dukakis. This is, it's a little amazing to me that it would be close at this point. Given what we've seen in the last 4 years, for starters.
Well, I think rhetoric's been a really big challenge for us in this election, and it's created a lot of background noise. That's why the way that we do grassroots has been so great. And of the 7 Senate races that we're engaged in, we've seen these officials, we've seen these candidates make major moves as people got to know about the policies. And really, what AFP specializes in is connecting someone's vote to the policies that the people that they're voting for, and then ultimately helping to get them out on election day. And whether it's the cost of gas and groceries, which whether or not you're connected to this election, I think every American is connected to the increased costs, whether it's the challenges at our southern border, whether it's increases in regulation, All of these things are based on policies of the Biden-Harris administration. And we've got some great candidates this time, whether it's Pete Ricketts or Sam Brown or Bernie Moreno, really just kind of across the spectrum. We've got terrific candidates who articulate a much better vision for where this country could be. And that's why we've been out beating the doors for these folks.
Well, I live in New York City, so I'm not familiar very much with the names you just mentioned. For example, where is Bernie Moreno running?
He's running in Ohio, a state where we, as I mentioned, have done just under 1 million doors. So he's someone who I think has articulated a great vision. People had to get to know him. And what we've seen over the past year is as people get to know Bernie Moreno, they're more excited about his candidacy. And I think we'll see that tomorrow.
And I assume he's running for the Senate?
Correct. Yes, he's running for the U.S.
JD
Senate.
Vance's old seat.
Running against Sherrod Brown.
This is it's extraordinary to think that, you know, there's the Senate and the House, not just the White House. Many of us often just focus on the White House, but you know, because I live in a blue state, it's tougher for me to know what's going on sometimes. So what races, like, what do you think is going to happen in Arizona? Any thoughts on that?
Look, I think all of these races are going to be incredibly competitive. I think that there's a big opportunity where electors where voters are looking at these critical issues and making decisions. What's going to happen in Arizona is going to matter based on who shows up on election day. But if you look at states like Wisconsin and Michigan with Eric Hovde and Mike Rogers, these were traditionally Democratic blue wall states. But if you've seen the numbers move significantly in recent months, it's because people have really started to question the policies that they see out there, and they're looking for a better way. And so whether or not it's McCormick in Pennsylvania or Moreno in Ohio or some of these blue wall states like Michigan and Wisconsin, I think folks are looking at an opportunity for an inflection point. And I think tomorrow's election really offers us that opportunity.
Do you think McCormick has a chance? I mean, that's exciting.
I think everyone has a chance. I think where we have seen the passion, when you talk about some of the work that we've done, whether it's, knocking 1 million doors in a state, or even in a state like Montana, hard doors to get with long stops between them, hitting more than 670,000 doors, that energy comes from somewhere. Those are passionate people who've utilized AFPA as a platform to be able to go out and try and make a difference. And so that energy is something that we've seen up and down the spectrum. It's reported. You see it as people go out and engage in these electoral activities. And I think we're going to see it on election day.
The website, I want to keep you for another segment because I got a lot more questions. But the website, folks, is americansforprosperity.com. Americansforprosperity.com. We'll be right back with Brent Gardner of Americans for Prosperity. Okay. So okay, here we go. All right, this is the 7-minute. Okay, here we go. All right. Folks, welcome back. I continue my conversation with Brent Gardner with Americans for Prosperity. So you were saying in the previous segment, Brent, that a lot of people in so-called blue states are waking up. In other words, to me, that's the good news, is that things have gotten so bad that people are, many of them for the first time in their lives, saying, wait a minute, maybe I've missed something. Maybe I have been drifting along thinking that everything was okay. Now I get the idea that it's not. I need to look at this. Maybe I should vote for somebody who's a Republican. I've never done that before. I mean, things have to get pretty bad, really, to shake us out of our complacency. But as you guys know, things are that bad.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've felt that throughout this entire cycle, where people are talking about issues that were largely relegated to think tanks talking about policies in the past. Today, those policies are having real impacts on people's lives, whether it's their family budget at the dinner table or the businesses that they're trying to grow and trying to run. I think across the board, people are looking for real policy solutions. And one of the things that AFP Action does is to try and help connect those folks to the type of elected officials that we want, the statesmen that have a plan to be able to turn this country around. And I think we've got a great slate of them, but it's very, very true that people are starting to question how they voted in the past. And they're looking for the kind of people that they can get behind. And I think they've got some great names to vote for on November 5th.
It's fascinating to me that how this, cuts both ways, because you have people, in the electorate, voters who maybe they have been Democrat, but they're waking up and thinking the way things are shaken out, I don't know that I can vote for what I've been voting for, and they're willing to cross over. But you're also seeing that among those who are running. In other words, you have people like RFK Jr., who was a very liberal Democrat 5 minutes ago. Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat. Elon Musk was certainly no conservative. But when you're looking for common sense solutions, things are so bad that common sense leads you to want to support Trump and the Republican Party, this is a sea change in American politics. It's an earthquake.
Yeah, I mean, for many years, people have talked about red voters, blue voters, Republican voters, Democratic voters. But at the end of the day, all these voters are affected by the policies that we have here in this country. And they're looking for the kind of folks that can offer us an opportunity to get to a better spot. They want real policy solutions to the southern border. They want solutions to inflation. They really care about our economy. They care about their children. They care about education. So I think from that perspective, where you've been in the past is really something that folks have started to look at. That's why this is an all of the above election. Simply motivating your base voters isn't going to get the job done, which is why AFP Action's been focused not just on base voters, but swing voters, low propensity voters, high propensity voters, and ensuring not just that they're committed to vote, but that ultimately they have a plan to do it. Because saying you're going to vote is different than actually getting out and voting, which is why driving big turnout here at the end is the most critical thing. And it's why we say it's got to be a run through the tape election. Don't take your foot off the gas until the very end.
Talk about the firewall strategy you guys have at AFP.
Yeah, Eric, like I said at the top, I mean, these are extremely close elections, which is why it's so critical that we ensure that we have the opportunity to have divided government at the very least. And so we look at the US Senate, which is our best opportunity, with West Virginia and hopefully Montana coming through. That would give us an opportunity to be able to stop some of the worst ideas. The ideas have gotten consistently worse from the institutional left year over year, whether it's court packing and eliminating the filibuster, taxes on unrealized gains. The ideas just continue to get worse. So we need to be able to stop the worst things from happening. In the House, we have a plan for a firewall strategy. I mentioned we're engaged in 44 House races across this country. The ability to ensure that the policies that go forward are good ones and that the worst ones don't happen, that's the firewall strategy. And I think we'll hopefully see, in this election cycle that people took that seriously and that we ensure the future for our country.
Do you have a sense of where we might be with the Senate and with the House? How many seats we might pick up?
It's tough to tell. I think ultimately it's really going to matter who shows up on election day. I think we're confident that a number of these races that these folks have gone out and they've made the right arguments. They've engaged the right people. They've done the hard grassroots election work across this country. And so hopefully we have an opportunity to see the majority switch in the US Senate, hopefully by a few seats. And hopefully the Republicans are able to retain the House. But a lot of the good work was done to do that. It's going to be a tough night. It's going to be a long night. And I think ultimately there's opportunity for the Republicans to prevail.
When you say it's going to be a long night, like how long? Like 72 hours? What's your sense?
It's tough to tell. The more people that show up, the shorter it's going to be. The more decisive the victories, the shorter it's going to be. But I'll remind you, in Alaska, there's a critical race out there for Nick Begich. And ultimately, Alaska is not going to close for hours after the East Coast. So depending on where you live, it's going to be a late night or an early morning. We've seen in recent elections that day of reporting is something that's been a struggle for some states. So ultimately, it may take time. And I think from our perspective, the bigger the lead that these candidates can run up, the more decisive the victory, the shorter the night it's going to be. But, we're prepared to watch till the end.
What do you think is the biggest issue with getting people actually to vote? Is it the weather? In other words, this year, what is your sense of that?
Yeah, I haven't seen much on the weather. I think the weather should be okay. I think look, folks have been disenchanted. The political rhetoric in this country has been really challenging. And I think there's a lot of folks who've been trying to understand what it is that makes it worth their time to go out and vote. And I think there's great arguments for it. I think the economy is something that's driven a lot of folks there. I think the challenges around immigration is stuff that's going to drive folks to the polls. I think the challenge is a lot of folks just don't go through and create a plan. Voting is time you have to take out of your day. For those folks who didn't vote early or didn't vote absentee, that means sometimes standing in line. But the future of our country is so critically important. I think there's a strong argument for these folks to go and take that time and do their civic duty. And I do think that there's a great opportunity for folks to be able to make a stand for what kind of country they want to have.
I was going to say, this is a duty we have, folks. It's not easy. It would be easier for me to skip it. There are many reasons you got to do it. You have a duty. You're going to have to live with yourself in the future if you don't vote. And so I say to everyone, please remember those who've died so that we could have self-government and we can choose our leaders. Very important. Very important. Brent Gardner, AFP. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We got it. Thank you so much. We're going to air this today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah. Bless you, Brent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we got to get set up. We got to finish our stuff, right? I would say, James, we're done. I'm done.
Yep.